Yes, that's right. It's Joe here for Joyrider TV, back with some more very interesting catamaran sailors Q&A to help you with your catamaran sailing for the next hour or so. In today's live broadcast, we're going to be looking at using the Traveller to sail different angles with the spinnaker. Oh yes, we're going to be looking at Traveller theme here, using the Traveller instead of steering for upwind power control. All right, we're going to be looking at one of the hot topics. I did reach out to the Hobie Cat group on Facebook for this one. Getting your launching trolley from the beach when you are sailing solo and you don't want to pull your boat up onto the beach, which might cause damage. Yes, we've got a big one, planning a 500-mile coastal voyage. Mast rake for older Hobie 16s we're looking at. And we are starting off with a question from Justin, which is, how many tacks and gybes would you do per leg on a race course? Yes. So just going to tackle this first question, and then I'll be jumping in to the live chat to see what's going on in there. All right. So Justin's question, how many tacks or jibes would you do on the race course? It looks like I have a race course on the board here already. So we, in a general race course, what we would always be doing is sailing around the marks, leaving the marks to the left hand side of the boat to port. So that means we'd be sailing around the course like this. So there's, of course, the most straightforward way that we would plan our route on the race course, and that would be like, if we're already underway, or actually not if we're already underway, let's say we've just come off the start line like this. So we'd generally be starting on starboard tack so that we've got right of way. So the most simple way for this first leg is, it is going to be 2 tacks to be able to get around the first mark. So we would need to tack part of the way up the upwind leg, and then when we get beyond what we call our lay line, which is an imaginary line that basically, when we cross that line, we know that when we tack, we can get around the buoy. So firstly, when would we put these tacks in? So the question is, when would we do this first tack? Well, the first question to that question is, which side of the course has got better wind? And the other part of that question would be, how big is the course? If it's a really small course, it really makes no sense to put in either a very early tack. Well, maybe it would actually. Yeah, let's leave that. But it would certainly, let's forget that actually. So if let's say the wind was even on the course, what we would want to do is we would want to do this tack so that when we do the next tack, we're between 5 and 10 boat lengths from the first buoy. Because by tacking so that the next tack gives us a bit of space to establish our course before we turn downwind, that is going to make for a much better mark rounding. Because if you imagine, if we turn downwind like this, we can actually gain some speed as we bear away around the buoy. But if we try to turn around the buoy like this, we're doing a complete 180-degree turn. So any momentum that we have is going to be lost as we go around the buoy. We're not going to be able to gain much speed going around there. It's going to be like doing a handbrake turn around the buoy. So tacking earlier so that we've got time to establish this course so that we can accelerate as we go around the buoy, that is going to be beneficial. There are other reasons why this is going to be beneficial. Like if you're coming up, like let's put a name on him, like boat A here, up to the buoy. We're on port tack here, and unless we're like significantly first or dead last, there's going to be traffic coming in on the other tack. And if we're coming in right on the buoy, we might find ourselves with no space to actually get in there, and you actually end up having to either do a really what would you call it, dicey, I would call it, a really iffy entrance at the mark where you might be infringing other boats, or you might have to bear away, sacrificing a load of space where you'll actually end up 10 boat lengths down like you would if you'd have tacked a lot earlier, and then you'd have got there a lot earlier. So much better to tack earlier for on the first leg of the course. So starting on starboard, tacking onto port, tacking back onto starboard, and then round we go. So that would be if the wind was completely even on the course. The difference would come, and this is just for the first leg, basically, if the wind is much better, like as you go over to the left side, if it does get much stronger, that's what we're looking for on a catamaran, because as you will have noticed, stronger wind means the boat goes faster, which means you'll get to where you're going sooner. So if we know that as we come over this way, either the wind gets stronger or the wind changes direction. So if here the wind direction is like this, and if we go over this way a bit more and the wind direction has come round, that actually means that when we tack, like as soon as we hit this wind shift, we tack, and that means that we can sail effectively a lot closer to the wind, which means if we have gone a little bit too far for the buoy, we can sail in more of a footing mode, which means rather than pointing the boat as close to the wind as possible, we're able to come a little bit onto like a close reach almost, where the boat is going to go significantly faster again, which is going to give us a benefit over the other boats. So that is if the wind is stronger on this side. If we come off the start line and we know that the wind is much better on the other side, we basically want to tack as soon as we can to get to that side before everyone else. Now, the difficulty that we'll find if we do tack early to go over to the right is judging this ley line is going to be much harder, because although, you know, we know what our tacking angle is from doing a bit of research, perhaps in those conditions before you start, or just from experience sailing your boat, you're going to know what your tacking angle is. But can we guarantee that the wind direction along this leg is going to be the same as we approach the buoy on the first leg of the course, unless you've had time to go and sail around the whole course before you start racing? It's difficult to know. So yeah, it's going to be more difficult to hit the ley line perfectly the further we are over to the right. But again, if the wind is better, we definitely want to go that way. All right, so that is lap number 1 upwind. What about lap number 2 upwind? So, and this is if we're sailing around a course which just has one leeward mark. So if we've got one leeward mark, that means we'll be coming in like this, and then we turn onto our upwind leg. So if the course isn't huge, so let's say it takes us about 5 minutes to sail the upwind leg, then you've got 2 main choices. Choice 1 is to what we call just bang the corner. So you just come out from the buoy on port tack and you sail all the way to the ley line, you tack and you go around the buoy, 1 tack. But the other option would be to do it in 3 tacks. So there's 1 here, 1 here, and then 1 to get round the buoy. And again, it just depends on which side of the course you feel that the wind is better. On a regular size course, then 3 tacks is generally seen as enough, but you don't know what's going to happen with the wind or with the traffic as you proceed upwind. Like if you think, all right, we're going off on port tack here, and we are right behind another boat which is just giving us loads of dirty wind, loads of dirty wind coming off this boat here, and we don't want to just take it. So if this is the case, we've got 2 options. If we're fairly confident about our boat speed, like if we just stayed there and took the dirty wind, by the time he's up there, you'd be down here. So if we're feeling fairly confident about this dirty wind, about your boat speed, sorry, then you could just, and it was windy, definitely if it's windy, then you could just bear away a little bit. And if you're able to get onto that sort of more of a reaching course and you've got enough weight to keep the boat down, then you can sail fast enough to actually sail through his dirty wind. But the more common thing to do would be to go, all right, we're going to tack off there, so that we get out of the dirty wind. And then maybe he'll go, I'm going to tack there as well. And you're like, oh, thank you very much. You know, that's kind. So then you might think, all right, we'll tack again and go back over this way. So keeping your boat in clean wind is one of the most important things that you need to consider as you're choosing when to tack on the course. So this could be like coming off the start line. If your start wasn't so good, like if your boat B here and your start wasn't so good and you're getting buried off the start line with dirty wind, then basically you just want to be waiting for a gap to appear. Like that isn't a big enough gap, but as these boats advance, you go behind him and get over to the right side of the course so that you're not just there sitting in dirty wind. Okay, so that is an overview on the upwind. I would say on a regular size course, 1 tack or 3 tacks is pretty normal. It's always on everything apart from the first lap off the start. It's always going to be an odd number, and 5 tacks sounds like quite a lot, unless it is a very long course. Then on the downwind, again, depends on where we feel that the wind is stronger, because the difference in boat speed on the downwind, even more so, with as the wind gets stronger, you're going to go much faster and you're going to sail at a better angle as well downwind. So you'll definitely get to the next mark sooner by being in stronger wind. And then, so the obvious would be, if the strong wind's on the left, just go down the left side, and when you pass about 90 degrees, jibe it there, and there we are. Of course, there might be other boats interfering with you on the downwind as well. So if there's a few boats like lining up here, they're really blocking your wind. So that might be a reason to jibe, to get out of that dirty wind. Or the other option in this situation would be to head up, try to gain a bit of boat speed. But then what will probably happen is these guys will do the same thing. So, and you don't want to be sailing, you know, a massively bigger distance than you need to. So again, if the wind is stronger on this side of the course, let's get over there and do a 3 jibe downwind leg. And then, yeah, we don't want to leave our last jibe so that we're hitting it right on the buoy, much like with the upwind leg. So if we're coming into the buoy here and we have to jibe on the buoy, we're going to lose all of our boat speed as we go round. So we want to be able to jibe and then gain speed as we come up through that beam reaching zone, and that's going to sort of fire us out onto the next leg. We could go into all sorts of detail on this topic, but we've got quite a lot to go through in today's session. So I hope that doesn't just cause immense confusion and actually helps. But thanks very much, Justin, for the question. All right. And just like to say, before we jump in, I'd like to say thanks very much to Hussein and to Boris for kicking off the super chat for today. So if you're getting value from this session, or you're finding it enjoyable, then hit the super chat button. It's just next to where you put the chat in. And this is what helps to keep the live Q&A ad free. Nobody likes those ads apart from Google. They like the ads. All right. Thanks very much. So into the live chat. So kicking off the live chat in pole position today, we've got SA1510, who says, what is possible without the trapeze? How soon will I start missing the trapeze harness when transitioning from a laser to a Hobie 16 with not so much cat experience? Yeah, you could, if you didn't want to, you know, do well on the race course, let's say, you could spend your whole catamaran sailing career without using a trapeze once. It is definitely one of the big fun aspects of cat sailing, but you can handle the boat without the trapeze at all. And in fact, I think what we'll do is we'll combine this with a question that I've got in the preloaded, which is a question from Eric, who says, if you're not racing, so the course to sail is not so important, what are the differences between using the traveler instead of heading up to control the power? Yeah, so and this is also going to be really helpful if you're not using the trapeze when it's windy. So usually, you know, if you were a trapeze artist, you would be starting to trapeze if you were sailing single-handed, probably in about 10 to 12 knots of wind. And if you're sailing double-handed, then yeah, in 12 knots of wind, that would be when you would be looking to get your crew out onto the trapeze. So if you didn't want to be going out on the trapeze in those conditions, there's a very easy way to reduce the power on the boat, and that is basically to let the traveler out. And it's like makes such a big difference to the amount of power on the boat generally. So if you're not trapezing, or if you are trapezing, when would you let the traveler out? If you're sailing in a recreational manner, if sailing along, you are constantly having to ease main sheet to keep the boat with the amount of power that you're comfortable with. So let's say you're not comfortable having this hull out of the water at all. That's fair enough. So your ultimate power control is the main sheet. But if you're having to ease loads and loads of main sheet, what you're actually going to have to do to control the power is work with a tremendous amount of rope to keep her under control. So much better than doing that is to let the traveler out. So even in 15 knots of wind on an upwind course, you could let the traveler out all of the way. You can still sail pretty well upwind. You wouldn't be going as fast or pointing as close to the wind. So traveler in, keeping the power on 15 knots, you'd be able to sail that kind of course. Whereas traveler out, you'd be a few degrees down, but you would still be getting upwind. So by letting the traveler out and then using that as the position from where you play the main sheet, you can really deal with a lot of wind without having to go out on the trapeze, and without having to, like, every time you get a gust, without having to head up massively when you're getting into those gusts. Now, one thing to pay attention to on the upwind point of sail is you need to know that you are going upwind. Now, a good way of determining if you're going upwind or not when it's windy is by looking at the way that the boat is sitting in terms of pitch control. So if the bow is lifting, so if it's lifting slightly, this means you're definitely going upwind. Because if you think about it, if the wind's blowing down here, if you're going upwind, we've got our mast, our sail, the hulls, everything. The wind is blowing everything backwards, effectively, pretty much, which means if you think it's pushing here, that's going to lift the bows, definitely going upwind. Whereas if we're not really sailing upwind, but we think we are, then what's going to happen is the bow's going to start driving like this, which means that we're not sailing upwind, we're more on a reach. And that is when you could get into the situation where you think that you're going upwind and you actually dig the nose in while you're going upwind. It's actually because you're not really going upwind, you're more on a reach, and you'll feel like you're going really fast, might feel a little bit out of control. So much better in that situation is to turn closer to the wind, and you'll see that your bow will start to lift. There we go. All right, I hope that is of help. Yes, a lot in the live chat today as well. So let's get into the live chat. Hello again to Hussein in Egypt. Hello to Johnny in Texas. We've got Marcus and Esther in Vancouver on board. Very good. FX1 specialists. Then we have got Onga Bunga 999. Who says depends on what the competition is doing too. Oh yes, I think that must have been before I said about what the competition was doing, giving you dirty wind in the racing context. Yeah, great to see so many channel members in the live chat as well. Thank you very much for supporting Joyrider TV through channel memberships. Of course, through channel memberships these days, you also get access to the Joyrider TV, the Joyrider Academy classroom series, which I have been saying it's 126 videos. It's actually only 120. Apologies for that, but more are on the way soon. Hello to Boris in Florida, and hello to HIDRDM in the Martiniques. Nice, in that, which is in the French part of the Caribbean, I believe. Is that correct? Yeah, because there was a lot of Hobie sailing that went on in Martinique back in the day, I believe. I could be wrong, but I think I'm right. Platypus Dreams is on board. My sleeping wife just woke me up with a dirty wind. Oh my gosh. The upside is it was just in time to catch Joyrider TV. Greetings from Australia. Nice. Yeah, the overnight Q&A shift there. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate you getting up in the middle of the night for some of this chat. All right, Boris says, if there is still time. I started trying to get out on the trapeze, but I kind of almost fall on the water like it is, like it's too low, close to the water. Please, can you comment on this? Yes, this is a good question. Yeah, if you feel that when you're going out on the trapeze, like if this is you on the side of the boat, when you're sat on the boat like this, and then when you go move out onto the trapeze, so as we've talked about in many of the trapezing videos, is the way that I would go about it, especially if you're new to it, would be to move into a half trapezing position first, where you're hooked onto the trapeze, 1 foot under the toe strap, because otherwise what you'll feel is your upper body is heavier than your lower body. And what happens is, being hooked on, when you hang out a little bit on the edge, your legs will want to be lifting up. So have 1 foot just under the toe strap to keep your legs pinned down in that half trapezing position. But if you feel when you get into that position, you drop down tremendously, 2 things that you can do to help. The first one is the obvious one. I might just have a trapeze kind of system just here. Yeah, first one, which is obvious. If we've got an adjustable system like this, then we can just shorten it. Nice. But if you've got a system which only has the rope lock adjuster like this, then you can shorten your trapeze by pulling the rope through here. This is quite an extreme example. And by the way, with these rope locks, do make sure that your rope has a cross in it like this. So it should, excuse the mess, crikey. So it should look like this on that side and like that on the other side. Yeah, so shorten your trapeze line would be one of the ways. But the way that I see with so many people so frequently is that their trapeze harness, the hook on the trapeze harness isn't tight enough. So on your harness, I haven't got one here, but on your harness, so I think we're going for a replacement. We've got the shoulder straps. We've got, can we see this? Yes, we can. We've got the hook with the straps, and then we've got the leg straps. Does that make sense? The ones that really, really, really need to be as tight as possible are the straps that come off the hook. Because if those ones aren't really tight, as soon as you go into this half trapezing position, what's going to happen is the hook, rather than being, it should be like an extension, just coming, like, I would say the ideal place for your hook to be would be where your belt would be on your trousers. So really waist level. If it's too high up, it's a bit uncomfortable, and too low down doesn't even seem possible. So your hook should be like, even when you've got it under load, you shouldn't be able to see any space between the hook and your body at all. If you can, then go back onto the boat, tighten your hook straps up more. This is definitely the most frequent reason for what you're talking about here. So if it's too loose, what will happen is your hook will actually be out here, which effectively makes your trapeze line longer, and that is going to dunk you in the water. The second thing that can really help, third thing, actually, talked about two things. The next thing that could really help with getting out on the trapeze, if you feel like you're going into the water every time you go to get out, would be to put the boat on an upwind course first, and just get enough power on, just so that we're lifting slightly. Not so that we're flying the hull, but so that you can feel there is a little bit of lift, and that is really going to help. There we go. Okay, where are we? That was Boris. So HID RDM says, is a carbon sail necessary for racing on a Hobie Cat 16? No, it's not necessary, and it's not actually class legal. So the only sailcloth which is legal on a Hobie 16 is Dacron, or a woven sailcloth. And there was a period where Hobie produced some what are they called, like laminate sails for Hobie 16s, but that was a period of just a few years, and all other Hobie 16s have got Dacron or woven. That's the kind of soft material sails, rather than a mylar or any other material like that. All right, Justin's in. Justin, who had the opening question about race strategy. Great to have you on board, Justin. How's everyone doing today? Joe, you're the man. Thank you very much, Justin. You are also the man. You can see Justin in action on the Joyrider Worldwide YouTube channel. What is the Joyrider Worldwide YouTube channel? It is the first channel of its kind where everybody is invited to upload their own videos. So your videos should get many more views than they would if they were just sitting on a channel with only one or two videos on there. Because everybody's uploading means there's many more videos on the channel from around the world on all different types of boats. And I think it is a really great way that we as a community can showcase catamaran sailing to the world. Thank you very much for getting involved with that, Justin, and everyone else. RJ Fleet's on board from Lake Benton, Minnesota, absorbing the information. Thanks for coming. We've got Dave on board. Dave HI108. You are not supposed to race in a Hobie Cat race with custom sails. Factory supplied equipment only. Yeah, depends on the event. Like if it was like of a regional Hobie Cat race, or a national, definitely an international regatta, you have to use all original, the big bits on the boat all have to be original, which means you have to have the original trampoline. You're not allowed to use an aftermarket trampoline. I know, seems weird that it's not a performance enhancing part, but it's because the Hobie 16, much like the Dart 18, is what's called a strict one design, which means everything has to be from the factory. Like on the Dart 18, which I used to race, you have on your trapeze elastic, used to connect it to your trapeze with some little metal clips. And if, like, I didn't have little metal clips, I was very young and on a budget and I didn't have them. So I just tied it on with a knot like you would. Oh no, when I got inspected at a national championships, they said, no, you must have the little metal clips. So it can be as much as that. But rope is something that you can definitely change. There we go. Doesn't have to be factory supplied rope on the boat. All right, Boris says, I've adjusted the height of the J&H, but it's still low, like my butt falls off the trampoline side. Yeah, I would guess it's because your harness is too loose. It's got to be the harness. If and a good gauge of if you've, when you pull this down, because it's kind of on the elastic, that I'd say to make it easy when you're starting off with trapezing, if you kind of make a like a hang loose with your hand, a shaka, I believe that's called, and little finger on the side of the boat, thumb on the bottom of the J&H when you pull it down, that is the kind of distance that you're looking at. Because it could be that on your boat, the actual trapeze wires are unusually long. Could be that. Yeah. And the other way you can gauge it is when you're sat on the boat hooking on, if you have to hoik yourself up a little bit to hook on, then that is going to make it much easier. So if it's coming down lower than that, then you are setting yourself up for bottom in the water. There we go. All right. HIDRDM says, in fun race, not official race, is a custom sail change a lot. Yeah, so in some fun races, like long distance races, or races where it's just they're just encouraging as many people to participate as possible. One that springs to mind is the Hilton Head anniversary regatta in Hilton Head, South Carolina, coming up in October this year. In regattas like that, where it's like we just want as many people to be able to participate as possible, then it doesn't have to be sails from the factory. Do they enhance performance? Only if they're bigger. Yeah. All right. We've got Rich on board in Dubai. Hi, Rich. Great to have you with us. I've got your preloaded question on the list. We will be coming on to that. Boris says, if I shorten it too much, becomes hard to clamp it to the trapeze harness. I have an original Hobie trapeze harness. Yeah. All right. So yeah, I'd have to see pictures or some video, Boris, to really go any deeper on this one. All right, we've got Bobby Bruce on board in Pennsylvania. What is the best combination for an adjustable block style trapeze adjustment? Best combination is exactly what I've got right here. This is pretty standard. So for an adjustable one, please don't pay too much attention to the lengths of the rope. But what we have is the bottom part is kind of like your regular Hobie style trapeze. And the idea here is this bit of movement means, because this is going to the shock cord, when you hook on, the shock cord pulls it back and that stops it from accidentally unhooking. Yeah, if it was like a monohull style system, which some cat sailors do use, then it would basically be this. Rather than having this bit, you would just have the ring directly attached here, but it wouldn't have any kind of pullback to it, so you're more likely to come unhooked. And then we've got the what they call these cleats, clam cleat, which it's got a roller in the back there. Don't know if you can see that, a bit out of focus. Oh, there we go. Roller in the back. And then that is how we are adjusting the height. So this is the system. Yes. All right. Continuing. Boris says, so solution is I have to have it really tight. That is what I'm feeling at the moment. Thanks very much. Always on point. All right. Next question. What would be good settings for a GoPro Max 2? GoPro Max 2. Yes, that's what we're going to be rolling with this season once I'm back on the water. Yeah, what would be the right settings? Let's see what. There we go. Yeah, so what it depends on is how long are you going to be filming for? This is the same for any type of action camera that you're using. The longer that you want to film for, like, for example, if you were going out sailing for an hour and you wanted to be able to film for that full hour, then I would suggest that even on the Max 2, where you can film in true 8K, that means you can zoom in a lot to the picture. In 8K, you still only want to film in 5.7K if you're using it as a 360 camera, or in 4K if you're using it as a regular GoPro style camera. Or if you're like, just to include people who've got the regular GoPro regular, if you really want to film for a longer time, filming in 1080 still looks absolutely great. So there's nothing wrong with filming in 1080. Then frame rate, I would film 24 frames per second, unless only reason to change your frame rate would be if you're wanting to do some slow motion, like if you think, right, if we capsize, I want to be able to slow it right down. And the way that the frame rate works is like, normal frame rate is 24 frames per second. That's Hollywood. If you double the frame rate, so that would be 48 frames per second, that means you can go to half the speed of the video, so 50% speed, and the video will still look just as smooth. Half it again, and then you can, so double the frame rate, you can half the speed again, and it will still look very smooth. And with these cameras, I don't even know what the maximum frame rate is that's available, but I dare say it is a lot. Let's just have a quick look. Frame rate goes up to 100. Yeah, 100, which means you could be shooting at a quarter of the speed, so at 25%. That's some pretty decent slow-mo, and it will still be absolutely crystal clear. So that is the settings that are important. And then I'll just turn it off. Why, you may ask, wouldn't you just bang it in maximum frame rate, maximum resolution all the time? It's because the higher you go two things. One, your battery's not going to last as long. Like these days, I think everybody should have an SD card that would last an hour filming at 4K, but its battery's not going to last. And if you are going to edit it, your computer needs to be more powerful to deal with higher frame rate and higher resolution. There we go. There is some solid gold stuff today. We are looking at a broad range of topics. All right. Stylus is on board. Oh, that's Marcus and Esther. Is there an adjustable trapeze harness make you would recommend looking to put 2 sets on the FX1? Yeah, if you're talking about this kind of caper, so are you talking about a harness or more the adjustment gear? If you could just pop that in the chat, then I can let you know. So we're calling this the trapeze tackle. That's what we're calling it. Whereas the harness, we're calling the harness. So if you could just clarify that, that'd be great. Adjustment gear only. Yeah, you can get these clam cleats. The brand is Clam Cleat. So CLAM cleat. And these are pretty much industry standard. And then any double block like this is the Harken, but other brands make very similar things. Harken is generally a more expensive brand that you could be using. And then other than that, your regular recycle the regular Hobie J&H trapeze handle and dog bone for the bottom part. There we go. All right. Okay. HID RDM says, what's the best place to put a camera on a Hobie Cat? You know, yeah, this is one of my favorites, favorite questions because I'm into it. All right, here we go. If this is our boat, let's just make a bit of space, shall we? All right, after this question, I'm definitely going back to some preloaded questions because we've got quite a lot to go through. So generally, the 2 best places, in my opinion, of having the camera, number 1, if you're just going to have one camera on the boat, is to have it. So if these are the bridle wires, have the camera underneath the bridle wires so that it faces backwards. This is the best spot, and that's why probably a good 70% of the footage that you see of catamaran sailing on the internet is using this shot. 2 reasons why this is good is, first one is you can see everything that's going on the boat. Second reason it's good is it's much less likely that your lens will get splashed. And even though these are extremely waterproof, what ruins your footage is if you get water, especially salt water, on the lens and then it dries, it gives you a very soft focus, which can mean that you can't see anything. My personal favorite, if I had to just have one camera, it would be on my head, because that gives you the ultimate freedom to film anything at all. And also it really does put the viewer in the driving seat. What I've noticed, I've recently become an Instagram reel creator, would you believe? Yeah, I'm too old for that, but I've been doing it. And what I've noticed with the viewing figures is all of the videos where it's filmed on the head cam had much higher views. And I think that is because it really shows you what it's like to be in that situation on the boat. So that's a really good one. Another good one. Oh, let's do this a bit nicer. Is off the back of the boom, use an extension pole, and then have a camera there. It gives almost like the double whammy view of, you can see where the boat is going, you can see everything that's going on the boat, and it looks cool. Very good. All right, just going to settle with that as an answer at this time. All right. So we've got Gustav on board in Denmark. Great to have you with us, Gustav. Hope you're having a good day. All right, HIDRDM, I think he's leaving. So goodbye. Thanks for coming. We got Christian on board, who qualified for Race to Alaska. Great stuff, Christian. I knew that you would do it. And looking forward to hearing more about that adventure as it unfolds. Great stuff. Okay, so we're now going to dive back into the live chat. All right, next one is, we've got Ryan in Australia, who says, I've been following your setup videos with mast angles, but apparently how you set the mast angle up on a modern Hobie 16 is quite different to that on an older boat. All right, so what we're trying to do, especially with the older boats, because I would guess this would be older boats would be classed as maybe pre 1986. And we are trying to get the mast as far back as possible on these boats, but there is a limiting factor. So the limiting factor is, just seeing if I've got one, but I haven't got one here, is you've got the mast step. So here's the front beam, and the mast step has got a kind of bit that comes down like this, and then you've got your mast foot, which, if we take it out of the mast step, and it's got a little nose on it for putting the mast up and down. So, and this is the front, so mast is there. So what happens is, if the mast is too far back, then the nose on the mast foot, this bit here, it'll, when the mast rotates, it catches on here, so it won't be allowed to rotate. So this is definitely our contributing factor, our limiting factor of how much mast rake we can have. If you wanted to have more mast rake, yes, you could take a hacksaw and chop a bit of this cut off his nose to spite his mast rake. Yes, cut the nose off there so that you can get it back a bit further. But that is the limiting factor of how much mast rake. The other limiting factor is, just looking at me magnets here. If I got a boat, sorry about this, I seem to have lost my boat. Here is a boat. The other limiting factor to how much mast rake you can have is this space here. So if you put the mast too far back, there's not enough space to actually be able to sheet in with your main sheet there. So if you feel that you can't get any tension on the main sheet blocks, that's it too far back. But other than these limiting factors, put it back on the older boats as far as you can. The other obvious limiting factor might be the length of the forestay. But if you've got a forestay that feels like it's a bit too short to be able to put the mast back very much at all, then do consider, so I'm looking for a chain plate. Oh yeah. Do consider going for the double chain plate linking the forestay to the bridle wires. So you have bridle wires come to here, 2 chain plates, forestay on the top. But when you put the jib up, you'll still attach the jib down here. There we go. All right. Mast rake, tick. Okay. All right. We're firing through. Hope everybody is getting something out of all of this this great information. By the way, if you're watching live and you haven't said hello, and you want to say hello, but you don't feel like you haven't got a question, just say where you are watching from. I think that's always very interesting to know which parts of the world we are hitting. All right, so next one that we're going to look at, we're going to go on to Rich's question, which is about using the traveler when you're flying the spinnaker. So don't know what I'm going to draw yet, but okay. So when you're sailing a boat, especially in heavier winds, with the spinnaker up, your normal position for the traveler and the main sheet would be in as tight as possible. Your main sheet may actually be tighter on the downwind with the spinnaker up than it was on the upwind because of the amount of apparent wind that the spinnaker is generating and how much further forwards it's bringing. And the spinnaker is also deflecting. Could we say deflecting in this context? I've got a blue spinnaker, so here we go. So it is deflecting or changing the angle of the wind. So, you know, the wind might be coming in, the apparent wind might be coming in at this angle, but then as it goes around the spinnaker, that is changing the angle of the wind, the airflow, as it comes round. So actually, by the time the airflow gets to the back section of the boat where the mainsail is, if the mainsail isn't cranked in hard, then it means that we are creating drag with the mainsail, because if we can imagine the mainsail being out like this, then this airflow is just going to be hitting the back of the main and it's going to be slowing us down significantly. So that is point number one. We crank it in on the downwind. As soon as there's enough wind that we've been trapezing on the upwind leg, basically that's, you know, as a general rule, that's when we start really cranking it in on the downwind. All right. So Rich says, what about when you're on the race course or any situation would do, and you're going downwind with the spinnaker up, and basically with the spinnaker, the way that we can control the power is with the steering. If we steer up towards the wind, we get more power. If we steer away from the wind, we get less power. So if, let's say, we're coming down here and there is an obstruction. Let's have an obstruction like this. Going to keep him there. So we want to turn to get around this obstruction, but we know if we turn up towards the wind, if we already have loads of power and we turn towards the wind, we're going to start flying the hull really high, and there's a good chance that we might actually capsize. The first thing we could try doing is, like, if there's an obstruction up ahead and we know that it's coming up from quite a distance away, first thing to do to try to get higher to the wind is double trapeze with the spinnaker up. It's very exciting. Boat goes really fast, but that might be enough to allow you to sail closer to the wind. Now, if that doesn't work, the next thing you can do to be able to sail closer to the wind is actually to let the traveler out. So we are deliberately, by letting the traveler out, we're deliberately slowing the boat down, because we're creating a bit of drag with the mainsail. Now, we're letting the traveler out, but definitely not letting the main sheet out, because the main sheet is responsible for supporting the mast. So we're letting the traveler out. That's going to slow the boat down, which means when the boat slows down, the apparent wind will shift back more, which means we can turn up towards the wind more, which means we can then get around our obstruction. Now, we don't want to sail too much like this, because like the mainsail, supporting the mast with tension in the main sheet, if we let the traveler off all the way, we're going to lose some of that support for the mast. So if it's really windy, there is an element of risk that we could break the mast. So don't just dump the traveler in heavy wind thinking I want to sail higher. Maybe if it's heavy wind and possibly on the race course, you might have put your gybe in too late, which is quite a strong wind racing spinnaker up. It is reasonably likely that, especially on your first lap, you might think, all right, we'll jibe when we hit 90 degrees, and you jibe to go around the buoy and you find this is the angle that you can sail. Then you could say, all right, then let's dump the traveler, double trapeze, and keep the spinnaker up. Is that the best thing to do? Or is the better thing to do sail on a little bit more, drop the spinnaker, come in on a reach, double trapezing very fast, and you'll feel more in control when you get to the buoys. So there are options there. Okay, so there you go, Rich. I hope that helps. All right, moving on. All right, SA 1510, thanks for the answers. Got to go. Greetings from the Baltic Sea. All right, thanks for tuning in. Okay, next one. We're going to, by the way, I know it's probably the most exciting question we've got today. Is it the question about what to do with the launching trolley? We're going to finish off with that one, because the next one is a big one. And this one has come from Khan Omoto, who says, I'm about to buy a Dart 18. Here we go. Nice choice. I would like to sail it to my hometown, about 500 kilometers along the coast. As I am not really an experienced sailor, my idea is just to use the mainsail until I will be more comfortable with the boat. Any thoughts about my plan? My initial thought, and I may not be alone here, is this sounds a little bit like it could be dangerous. If you don't have very much experience in sailing generally, and you want to sail 500 kilometers down the coast, 500 kilometers, let's think, how much would you be likely to do in one day being a less experienced sailor? If you're less experienced, it definitely means you don't want to be going out when it's a strong wind. So maybe you could do 50 kilometers in a day. Because you wouldn't want to do, let's just be conservative. So that means that you're going to be sailing for 10 days to get down the coast. In those 10 days, even if you have meticulously studied the weather forecast, and you study the weather forecast, and the weather could change in that time, and then before you know it, the next day it's blowing 30 knots of wind, and you not being experienced. This is really quite dangerous. But if you are going to do it, what I would strongly look at is, like, if this is our coastline that we're sailing with, we're starting off from here and we're looking to get to here. And this is kind of like a bit of a deal breaker, is if the coastline is all sandy beach. So if it's sandy beach all the way along, and you know, you might have the odd rocky bit that sticks out along the way, but most of it is sandy beach, then this is the only thing that I would say makes this 500-kilometer journey viable, is having the ability to get your boat onto the beach at any stage on this journey. But otherwise, if you didn't have that ability, I would say this journey looks quite dangerous. So yeah, that is what I feel about that. And the other thing is, and this is actually going to tie in very nicely with today's extremely hot topic. The other thing is the Dart 18 isn't as hard wearing as certain other boats, like the Hobie 16. The bottom of the hull on the Hobie 16 is one of the strongest fiberglass hulls in the game, whereas the Dart 18, with the skeg hull, I've got a skeg hull somewhere. Here we go. With the skeg hull that looks like this, especially this part of the hull is extremely fragile. And if it's proper sand, you should be okay. But if it's like any sort of rocks, you're going to end up not having much hull left, with it getting ground away. The other thing on this expedition, which is a bit of a deal breaker, is down this stretch of coastline, do you have waves? If there are waves down this stretch of coastline as well, then I would say see about putting the boat on a trailer and towing it down, and learn and getting used to sailing your Dart 18 in flat water, in low winds to start with, before putting your head into the jaws of the metaphorical lion. There we go. Safety first, very important. But spirit of adventure, equally important. But I think safety first comes first. There we go. All right. By the way, if you happen to be watching this live or later on, if you could just do me a favor and hit the like button, that means more people will get to see this, because YouTube will put it in front of more people. And I've been talking quite a lot, so I'd like to think that this amount of talking is worthwhile to a good amount of people. All right, so the last one for today. And in fact, before we go on to the last one, I'd just like to say we've been going for 1 hour and 10 minutes now. If you found this useful or even just entertaining, Super Chat keeps it going. And if you are watching this later, becoming a channel member for Joyrider TV It's a great way to support the channel, and you get access to the complete Joyrider Academy classroom series. If you really want to have the deepest possible understanding about everything to do with catamaran sailing, that's what you need. Thank you very much, and we'll continue. Just like to say hello to Ryan, who has just tuned in from Maui. Great to have you with us, Maui. Ryan, as always. All right, so the last question is from Raphael, who says, I find it difficult to arrive and get the boat out of the water without beaching it first. So I can get the beach wheel. Oh, so I can get the beach wheels. So, yes. If you're sailing solo, here's the beach. Here we are sailing solo. So we've come in, the wheels are on the beach. But if we're sailing solo, what can we do with the boat when we run up the beach? Like, I think the usual thing is to pull the boat up the beach. But Raphael says, I dislike pulling the boat up the beach. My boat has never been beached like this before, and the hulls will suffer, like on Khan's Dart 18 on this 500-kilometer journey. So any practical advice out here? And as I mentioned earlier, I did actually put this question to the Hobie community on Facebook, because there's a lot of good ideas that come out on occasion. And one of the best ideas, which I think is possibly the only viable one, the only viable solution to this, is by setting either a permanent, if you always sail from the same place, setting a permanent mooring. So when you come in, turn the boat into the wind, drop the mains, turn the boat into the wind, clip the boat onto a mooring, and then with the boat on the mooring, you can then drop the mainsail. As I find it much easier to do it when the boat's on the water, because you can stand on the trampoline guilt-free, drop the mainsail, roll it up, then jump off the boat, go onto the beach, get the wheels, push the wheels under the boat, and then you can bring the boat up the beach. So that would be with a permanent mooring. By the way, the permanent moorings that we use at Wild Wind Sailing Holidays here in Greece, what we have is we take an old car tire, or you could use an old wheel from a car or a truck or something, and we fill it with concrete. And then when we put the concrete in, we put some plastic tube through the middle of the concrete, so then we can pass some rope or chain through the middle of the tire. So then we'll have some chain coming off here, or just rope all the way, because it's not like an anchor that we need chain to make it work. But the chain is better at this, with this angle, because it's not going to pull straight up, it's going to pull at an angle. So having chain means that we're less likely to snap the rope. And we then have, I think we used like a 12mm 3-strand rope spliced onto the chain there, which goes up. We then have a buoy on there so we can find it. And then on the end, we have a carabiner clip, which maybe looks like that. And then what we have on the bridle wires of the boat, you might have seen this in some of the videos, is we have a rope loop in the middle And then this carabiner clips through the rope loop and around the wire of the bridle wire. So all that the purpose of that rope loop is to stop the carabiner from sliding down the bridle wire and bashing into the hull, which could cause damage. So that is how we're organizing our moorings at Wild Wind, and we've done this for over 30 years now, and it works really well. That is if you're going to have a permanent mooring. The other thing you could do is use an anchor, a small anchor, like something like a 3 kilo, which would be slightly overkill. Let's just see what that is in real money. 3 kilo, which is a 6.5 pound folding grapnel anchor. And then if you are using an anchor, then it is essential to have chain, because the way that the chain works is it pulls the anchor down flat to the floor, so it's more likely to dig in better. And you could put a temporary mooring in off the beach. Now, I was thinking about this and I thought, if the wind is offshore, then yes, not quite as safe. But what you could do if the wind is offshore and you want your boat to stay there while you go and get the wheels, then you could just have with you a long length of rope. I would suggest actually that if you're not racing, having a loop of rope like that on your boat is very handy, because then you could take, you could take a rope from the boat tied around the dolphin striker, then it needs to be led through the bridle wires like this to keep the boat into the wind. And you could take this line, and if you're feeling quite strong and it's not so windy, you could just run up the beach holding on to the boat with a long line, grab the wheels, and then walk back to the water, reel the boat back in. Don't let go of the line though. If it's offshore, you'll lose your boat. Or you could take the line up the beach, tie it around a tree or something, that kind of action. But the other best way of securing the boat when you're running up the beach to get your trolley would be to ask a friendly passerby to grab your trolley for you. They're less likely to want to wade into the water and hold the boat for you. So there are some options there. But at the end of the day, yes, it's tricky. If you have got a sandy beach and you've got your boat in this position, then it might just be the easiest thing is, rather than dragging the boat out of the water onto the sand, you lift the back of the boat up as high as you can so that the front of the boat is floating and you're reversing the boat onto the beach, but so there's minimal drag because you're floating it out of the water. That's the other option there. Okie dokie, there we go. Thanks very much, everybody, for tuning in. I think I'm going to leave that there for today. Have a great weekend. If you're going sailing this weekend, get on the speed stick. There's been some big movements on the speed stick, which will be updated on Monday. So if you are going out this weekend, putting in a big speed, then do get that to me Monday morning so you could be on the update, which will be on Monday. Thanks very much. And hello, Hans, just getting in there at the end. Thanks for the chat yesterday evening. Indeed. All right. See you soon with some more.